What's going on, folks? What's going on? And welcome to the D-constructing Topic podcast. My name is David, and I'm your host of this wonderful, legendary podcast, the D-constructing Topic podcast, where we talk about a little bit of it all. But today we have a little, important episode. Once again, I like to touch on things that have affected me and affect our communities. And it's one of those things where I have mentioned in my podcast, in a previous podcast, is that domestic violence, to me, it's a thing where my family, my mother say survival of domestic violence. And today we got an episode. And for those listening to my episode out there, today's episode, once again, if you need help, there's a national domestic violence hotline. Feel free to give a call at 1-800-799-7233. There's help out there. There's many people out there that are willing to help. If you know somebody, whatever the case might be, I know it's like for some reason, it's a touchy subject because a lot of people tend to kind of use the word domestic, as in domestic violence, as it's something that happens in your house. As they always say, whatever happens in your house, take care of it. Anything else, we'll talk about it. But no, people forget that there's a word violence in that little two-word thing. And today we're going to talk about an interesting topic, a little viral thing that's going on in Puerto Rico. And once again, a lot of the things that I experience when it comes to domestic violence is through the struggles or the situations that happen in my family. And, in this case, my mother, and shout out to my mother. She kind of reached out to me and say, "Hey, David, ¿cómo está?" You know what I mean? I got something to tell you. You heard this story, My mother being born in Puerto Rico, living here in the United States. Yeah, she got one of those old school accents. Yo, papi. Well, she don't call me papi, but David, I got something for you. But you know what? No laughing matter, because this is a definitely interesting topic. And I just want to touch on a couple of things on domestic violence. I also want to give a shout out to another story, and I'm also going to put the links in the description. It's a YouTuber or a content creator. Let's just call someone who's telling stories. His YouTube channel is Evil Intentions. There's a story about an individual by the name of Wanda Rodriguez back in 1990. She was a victim of domestic violence that led, sadly, to her demise. And it involves a little kid, a daughter, who grew up knowing that, hey, my father did this, but he disappeared. And it was an open case where nobody really wanted to talk about this happening in the Bronx. Well, I take it back. People just kind of like, it happened, that's it. Maybe the individual just disappeared. But to find out that a father was living in the Dominican Republic and so on, and then he passed away years ago. So some type of closure. But it's a definitely interesting story, because I want to touch on that. Because sometimes, a lot of times, when it comes to domestic violence, we kind of tend to think that sometimes it's just two people, men and a woman. For this case, might be, we already know that there are men who are victims of domestic violence. But domestic violence could also mean, parent, kids, whatever it is that's domestically that's just getting out of hand. So it's one of those things that, for the most part, cases about domestic violence involve women. So in Puerto Rico, and my mother shared this story, there's an individual by Miguel Gonzalez. He's the father of a victim of domestic violence. And it seems that her daughter was a victim and sadly brutally attacked by her boyfriend. And, it's one of those situations where in Puerto Rico, and sadly, hey, listen, I'm just going to throw out there dirty laundry. And I'm also going to touch topics that happens in our community, the Black Latino community, because we are ranking at 1 and 2 when it comes to a victim of domestic violence, especially amongst our women. But places like Puerto Rico, for some reason, it's an issue. A big issue that we've been dealing forever, being that my mother was a survivor of domestic violence in Puerto Rico. And it's that, sadly, one of the things that happened in the case of Miguel Gonzalez, who is the father of the victim, decided to take it upon himself and, let's just say, end the life of the abuser. Now, there's a little thing going on, my understanding, and I'm one to just how can I say? Because it happened over the weekend. So it's one of those things where I'm just listening to learn more. Because sometimes I don't like to jump into things without really giving the information. But it is, in general, a topic and something that has happened in our community. It has happened throughout the world. So it's not just in our community, but I like to point out community because, again, when it comes to Black, Latino communities in the United States, that's like what, number one and two? So sometimes what happens in cases like this, and it happens in cases like this where somebody, and in this case the father, decides to take it upon themselves to, hey, listen, if justice or whatever the system have not take care of our woman, you know what? Let me take care of things on my own. And you have, two sides of the fence here. There are people that said, hey, listen, he should have not been arrested. He did what a father would do in a situation like that. There's those that say, hey, listen, it doesn't matter. He committed a crime. That's the point there. He committed a crime. He took it upon himself. That means that we're going to let people to decide to take justice upon themselves. We could go on and on and on. But it's a situation, and one of the reasons why my mother reached out to me in this case. And I see that a lot of people now around my socials, because there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in my socials, you know what I mean? They have kind of shed light on what's going on and basically kind of giving their opinion on the situation. I always like to look at things on the both sides because the fact that there was a situation, in my understanding, there was rift between my grandfather, the father of my mother, and my father, the abuser. You know what I mean? Where, things could have gotten heated. My father passed away when I was young for other causes, but whatever the case might be, those situations are often common. And sadly, there are sometimes situations that are ignored because, hey, it happened at the house. That's your problem. If you don't leave, sadly, there's a lot of women. And I'm going to say, when it's specific to say women in this case. And again, I understand that there are other things of domestic, but I'm just going to say what's the leading? Like 90%, 95% is the woman. There's a lot of causes why a woman would leave in a case that they will feel like, maybe that person, maybe the man is having a hard time, the husband, we got kids, we're going to try to patch it out, whatever the case. And sometimes that leads that the more time you're holding into something, the more time, and a story. And even there have been many times where women have moved on, but sadly, situation is that, there's that jealousy rage, there's this rage, there's whatever rage, revengeful, you left me. Sometimes I've heard stories where two couples, they married, they have kids, then one is doing, the abuser, the man, the woman, and then, I don't know, where you kind of create this, the man create this thing of that, oh, you've been playing me, you've been doing dirt, and you left me, now you're getting married with somebody else. And that's the reason why, for some reason, there are men that get into this illusion, and I've heard stories where they create these fake narratives, a fake story just to justify what they did. Oh, you know what? Oh, she's getting married. You hear the story. Oh, she's getting married to the new guy. They've been together for 2 or 3 years. Maybe that's the person that you was cheating me on when most likely it wasn't. See, domestic violence has so many intricate and so many different aspects that it's not just, just one path where that's what determines domestic violence. In the case of Wanda Rodriguez that was murdered in 1990, with the child who actually came on TikTok. I mean, she went on TikTok. That's how she started telling the story. And to find out that her father, the one that killed Wanda, the mother, passed away in DR of whatever causes, natural causes, something to that effect. And the fact that she was affected for years because she was a witness, she was there, whatever the case might be. And sometimes we forget about that as well. There's a lot of children that survive that situation where sadly someone decides to take it upon themselves to end the life of another. Let's say in this case would be a man to a woman, and there are children involved. There are sometimes, sadly, the man will take the children's life as well, but there's many times that they don't, for whatever great miracle that happens. But you see, if because And that's one of the things that I remember I mentioned this to a couple of my sisters, my black sisters in the community. For those, they support of the Black Lives Matter movement in regards to, let's say, a situation where an unarmed black young man, whatever the case might be, gets killed by an armed cop. Sometimes I like to think that, yes, racism does play a part, but I also like to think and like to mention that a lot of our, young brothers and sisters, Black and Latino, who come from a household of domestic violence, we are 1, 2, or 3 steps behind certain situations. Sadly, if a black brother comes out, especially young man, comes out of the household where his mother has been a victim of domestic violence, and he leaves the house, he's walking in the streets outside, jittery, nervous, not sure what to do. A cop stops him. Hey, young man, what are you doing? What are you doing? Put your hands up. The kid doesn't know what to do because he just witnessed what? He's going to probably tell the cop, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I can't put, he's going to be nervous what the cop's going to do. But you see, a lot of times I like to think that, listen, can we find out exactly a little further? Because if that's the case, well, then what are we doing? What are we doing in our community to address the situation with domestic violence? In the case of the daughter of Wanda Rodriguez, she has spoken out how traumatized, and every year on the anniversary of the death of her mother or her birthday, something to that effect, she goes on a dark depression. Now, for every person that goes out there that are maintaining, holding on to life because there's a story to tell, there's those that either start going on these, whether it's drugs or alcohol, they go to these dark places because that's the only avenue. And again, I always plead to people, we need to address the situation with domestic violence in our neighborhood, in our communities, because it's a cycle. Now, sadly, if one thing, my understanding is that, domestic violence tends to kind of go a little bit upscale when it comes to, and when I say upscale, we're talking about like the stats, the number in areas, there's poverty. And I've been living in New York City for a long time, and there's a lot of area of poverty. And those area of poverty, and when we mean by poverty is compared to what it is on the national scale. I don't like when people be like, well, compared to the other countries, at least, no. Let's compare the numbers here. There's a lot of people in poverty here in New York City. And when it comes to poverty, you make bad decisions. And when you make bad decisions, one of the things that happen is that domestic violence tends to just go up because now you got 2 struggling people. Now, sometimes there's stories where the mother's working or collecting some public assistance, and then the husband, the man, whatever it is, boyfriend, struggling, not doing much. So 2 people struggling at the same time, whatever it is, hey, it's never a good thing. Now we hear, how can we address it? How can we address it? Like I know there's programs out there, but we definitely got to somewhere, somehow, try to nip things to, as they would say, nip it to the bud, meaning that, hey, listen, if you are someone who sees a woman or children with marks or whatever, always stress. I know that sometimes it's hard for us because you say, well, it's not my problem, it's not my business. Well, sometimes you got to make it your business because you'll be saving not only just one life, which is a woman, but you're probably going to be saving kids as well. And sometimes there's women out there that just might feel shameful to seek for help. One interesting story, once again, that happens in the community is that there's a lot of immigrant, undocumented women who suffer through domestic violence. Yeah, people, I'm touching a pulse here that a lot of people don't touch it, but I have to touch it because, you know what? It comes to a point in life that you kind of say to yourself, why is it collectively there are communities in the Black, brown, Latino community, why are we struggling? And we struggle because there's so many issues that nobody, and depending on the issue, there's people with well-meaning, there's people with money, there's people who can help. They don't care about those issues. They care about whatever issue that they can make money, whether it's a George Floyd situation, whether it's another situation, whatever narrative they can make money, will be willing to step in. Any other issues that we have within our community, that's your problem. Gang, you know what? Okay, maybe the cops will intervene, whatever the case might be, but hey, most likely that's on them. Hey, that's not our problem. And the situation with Miguel, that's, again, you can feel free to share, comment what you think about the situation, whether he was justifiably or he had to, how can I say, the decision to go out there and do and take things upon himself. Let's go. Last time I checked in Puerto Rico, and it's one of those situations, because why does it happen in certain areas? Because sometimes the system is full of the abuses. So when someone does the abuse, whether it's the judge, the lawyers, the local police, if 50% of them are abuses, then guess what? It happens in the Christian churches as well. Sadly, some of these pastors, leaders in church, they are the abusers. So, but they're going to tell the world, well, God, God this, and, you only could divorce, and those, at least do the best thing to help those individuals, because I guess it comes to a point that, hey, listen, we ain't going to have enough women out there in this world, because us, the abuser, nobody reports it, nobody does. There's not a lot of programs, so it's an interesting topic. It's one of those things that I'm always going to be talking about it more and more and more, because until whatever it is, until we do a big march, forget about these marches that we have every weekend. When we do a big march in unison, you're going to see the people that's on that crowd. And yes, there are domestic violence marches and groups and all that. But when the numbers continue to be the same, Black, Latinos, and again, it happens in brown communities, Asian communities, other type of communities, white community, it happens. But those numbers, 1 and 2, followed by what? Crime, drug use, there's poverty, and so on. And, a lot of times when you don't eat good and you don't have the means to eat or even eat a good meal, it's going to throw you off, man. It's going to throw you off, because trust me, I've been there, done that. And then, a lot of us, in a lot of the domestic violence situation, you also hear a common story: drugs, alcohol. For some reason, mainly alcohol. What does that tell you? And hey, listen, and I've been in the struggle where hey, listen, I'm financially, I'm not stable, I'm just struggling. But guess what? The human being would say, I got $5. Let me use $1 to eat. Let me use the other $4 to alcohol, or find a way to kind of, escape or something to that effect. That's the truth, man. And that's just the human nature. That has nothing to do with, oh man, why people are dumb and why would they spend money on alcohol when they don't have money to buy food or don't have that much. That's just human nature in itself, where sometimes we gravitate to whatever, kind of ease our pain, especially if you grow up in a environment of domestic violence, especially if you're a victim of survival, whether you're the mother, the children, whatever the case might be. Sometimes that's our escape, nothing else. And once in a while, we get those good stories of escaping as a woman with the kids. We get those stories, and I love those stories. And I love those stories that they're on the right side of women, and then not forget, okay, this guy right here, oh my God, he's a leader in this world. How can I say he's a leader in the community? He donates money, and because he does that, we have to not charge him with whatever it is, because he did that, and that happens as well too. That's why I mentioned the pastors. Oh, but he's a church leader in the community. So what? What does that mean? If that person did wrong, if he did wrong, we need to go after that person. Because you know what? Every time that we ignore the signs of domestic violence, trust me, somebody's life will be taken away. Women and kids, for the most part. Anyways, this is the D-constructing Topic podcast. Heavy to the set, but feel free to hit the like, enjoy, comment. When I say enjoy, just listen to it carefully, because we here and we all got each other. Anyways, I'm out of here. D-constructing Topic podcast. I'm out. Let's make it happen.